Apologize to any tea drinkers. I was gonna bring different teas with me and I forgot. But I haven't heard any complaints, so that's good. So I'm very excited. And I know we're all here because the president of University of Hawaii just got on and it's 5 a.m. there, so very impressed. So we're going to talk this morning, we've been talking about the legal challenges that are in the works, and then NCAA and what the vision is there. We've gotten a few recommendations on how faculty can help, and I'm going to just repeat them to keep them in top of mind. We can advocate, generate ideas. We can not let the myths persist. We can look over academic policies, which of course we do as faculty. We can join an NCAA committee. And actually, I will get the list of committees and get that out to people. And then, of course, they described how the graduation rates have gone from, it sounded like in the 50s in 2002 up to the 90s, 80s and 90s now in 2024. So I would think that would be one of our major roles, to watch the graduation rates, to support the students, but then there's the health and welfare that we're going to talk about later. So we have wonderful representation from, and we were talking earlier with the FBS, what did they call them? The FBS autonomous division or schools, the FBS schools, and then I forgot what the other categories were, but we're very lucky today to have representatives from the Power 5 schools, the Group of 5, University of Hawaii, and then HBCU. We've got Siobhan Mansfield from Howard University. So I'm excited to have us talk. We did hear it said today, the haves. We didn't hear it said the have-nots, but somebody referred to themselves as the haves institution. So that would probably be the Power 5. So we have representatives from a broad swath of the country, and I'll let everybody introduce. Well, we've got folks here and online, so we'll have people introduce themselves. But the questions we're discussing are the same ones we've been talking about this morning. How will the legal cases impact our student athletes? And now I'm afraid to call them student athletes, and now I want to call them collegiate athletic athletes, because we heard earlier that the term student athletes came from workers' comp rules, and that's why they're called student athletes. So anyway, so the questions we're talking about is what will be happening and what can faculty do? So keep that in mind. With the conference changes, they're hard on athletes, the legal cases, employee status, unionizing, Title IX, Olympic sports, health and welfare. This is all on top of our minds. So let's go around. And I know we have
Ellie?
Paul Bautista. Yes.
President Lassner said he can't unmute or turn on his video.
Okay, let me work on that. Go ahead, Paul, and introduce yourself.
I'm Paul Bautista. I have been the FAR at Texas A&M for 8 years. I'm finishing up my 8th year. I teach the legal aspects of sport in the sport management program. My background is I practiced law and represented some professional athletes. But I'm also on the executive committee of the Southeastern Conference.
All right, and then we've got David Lassner, President, University of Hawaii. Dr. Lassner is going to try and rejoin, hopefully, because he's.
Oh, yes, sir.
Oh, I know, but he can't.
No, he's waving to us.
Oh,
Yeah.
I made it.
All right. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi, David Lassner, President of the University of Hawaii. We play football in the Mountain West, which is a Group of 5 conference, and we play everything else in the Big West, which has no football.
Thank you. All right, and then Siobhan Mansfield.
Hey everyone, I'm Executive Athletic Director and Senior Woman Administrator at Howard University. We're a mid-major school, FCS school, football championship subdivision. So we do have football, but not funded fully to the level of the FBS schools. And we belong to two conferences, the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference in most sports, and some of our Olympic sports are in the NEC, the Northeast Conference. My background is diverse across Division I. I also spent some time at conference offices, including the SEC from 2011 to 2014 when Mike Slive was the commissioner and when Texas A&M was added as an institution. So it's good to see everyone today.
Yeah. And we've got Kathy Horn, the other UH.
The other UH, yes. Good morning. My name is Kathy Horn. I serve as the faculty athletic representative for the University of Houston. I'm in the College of Education as dean, and my background is around education policy, higher education policy in particular.
And Susie Gronsa.
Good morning. The University of Houston contingent is quite strong in this session. I'm also at the University of Houston and serving as the president of the University of Houston Faculty Senate. My appointment is also in the College of Education, and my background is learning design and technology.
Thank you. And Adrian Boucher.
My name is Adrian Boucher. I'm the Richard and Helen DeVos Endowed Chair, Professor of Sport Business at the University of Central Florida. I came from the University of Tulsa, where I was the COIA representative for about 8 or 10 years, and then I was the faculty athletic rep the last 3 years, and I was also the vice president of the Senate at the University of Tulsa. I've been at UCF for about 3 years now, so I've seen when I got here, we were a group of 5 school, but now we're a power 5 school, which only ensures that our budget is going to go up and up and up.
All right. And I was so excited by the other UH that I missed. Randy, who is right here with us. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Randy Lee. I'm the COIA representative from the University of Houston. I'm also a professor of chemistry and the Associate Dean for Research for the College of Natural Sciences and Mathematics.
So we have a larger contingent from the Power 4 to 5, but that's okay because we're going to talk about how it impacts all of us. How about if we start and go in the order we introduced? So Texas A&M, University of Hawaii, Howard, University of Houston, and Central Florida. And let's talk first about conference changes. Have conference changes impacted your students' ability to participate? Have you had any response from students saying this is too hard? Any questions from the group on conference changes, fears, likes?
I'm Vera Hutchison, also from the University of Houston. I would like to have the
Gee, where'd all these speakers come from?
I appreciate my colleagues. I would like for the panel to discuss if they have noticed any hardships from the transfer portal that cause students to lose credits or lose their eligibility status as a transfer student.
Do you want it to go in order of that, or?
Yes, however you want it to occur.
I mean, we could take all of it in one piece, but okay, let's do transfer portal. Paul, have you seen any impact of transfer portal on graduation rates, which we know may happen, or anything?
We're trying to figure numbers on that yet, but the transfer portal is basically so new. We really don't have numbers, but that's one of the issues that we talk about in our Faculty Athletics Council. And it's one of the issues right now that we're trying to dig into to see the graduation rates and of the transfer ins. Obviously, the transfer outs, we really can't do anything about that. And there's no need really to follow them. But we are cognizant of that and trying to figure out how that impacts academically.
And how about the conference changes and the travel? Let's lump those two questions together. Your students saying anything about?
So I began FAR in 2016. We were already in the SEC, so really no changes because they were already there. It was a significant change, I think, travel wise, when the change was made, but I was not involved at that point. So I really can't comment on that.
All right, Dr. Lasner, how about transfer portal impact, conference changes impact? Any insights you have?
So, the most recent round of realignment hasn't taken effect yet, right? Those were all things that took place last year or this year and will impact students starting next academic year. So we have not been impacted. We had no conference realignment as a result of all of this. Both of our conferences are 100% stable. We're picking up scheduling of the Pac-2, as we affectionately call them, the leftovers from the Pac-12 that didn't get to go anywhere else. Washington State and Oregon State are actually in our region, the Mountain West. So I think they made a pretty good move there to keep their student athletes in the region. And I have quite a bit of respect for Washington State and Oregon State, which got dealt a very raw deal by their soon-to-be former colleagues. And they are keeping their student athletes pretty close to home in their alignments with the Mountain West and West Coast Conference. Where I expect we will see the most impact and I hope outcry is associated with the Pac-12 schools that aligned with the Big Ten. When you start seeing USC, UCLA, playing places like Rutgers and vice versa. And football doesn't matter because everybody takes all of the Power Five and especially the top of the Power Five take very good care of their football players who all fly on charters to and from everywhere they're going. But when you start thinking about the women's water polo team traveling from LA to New Jersey for routine conference matches, I expect we will start to see some outcry next year.
Having been a
Yeah.
water polo player myself, and the farthest we went was from Boston to Slippery Rock, and that was tough. Yeah, I would have to agree with that.
Yeah. On the portal, I agree with the statement that we don't really know yet what the incoming is. I will share that on the outgoing, the NCAA, if they don't change their distribution methods, and some of you may be more familiar with how all this gets calculated, but there are the students who leave in some sports are actually considered, they're counted against your APR, your graduation rate calculations. And I'm almost certain that will be fixed almost immediately, especially given the decisions this week to basically create 100% mobility of student athletes anytime, anywhere. So academic leadership is really the only guard against this, given the free rein given to student mobility to go wherever you want to go. Actually, that's not true. You can't go in the middle of a season yet, but that may happen. Who knows? But somebody's going to have to keep an eye on those students. I think part of the challenge is how many of those students who are transferring, and I mean, no matter what anybody says, nil is now pay to play. So they're going for money. They're not going for their education. And in question is how many of them actually, do the student athletes care if they graduate? And if they don't care if they graduate, then it's going to be very, very hard to help them. And we're just going to have to see that stabilize over time. And particularly if anyone can figure out how to fix nil so it actually is about marketing your name, image, and likeness rather than what it has become almost immediately, which is how do we lure the players our coaches want so they can win championships?
Yeah. Thank you. And Siobhan Mansfield.
We have been impacted by the transfer portal at Howard. What happens is we usually we're doing well in athletics. Usually we've been known as an academic school. The past 3 to 4 years, we've been winning across the board in our 21 sports, from football all the way down to Olympic sports. So we'll have players play here for 2 years and they transfer to a Power 5 school. And it hurts our APR numbers a little bit, but what we're finding is that more recently, to retain students, our cell is a little bit different from what the other institutions have to offer, because really Howard University is in the middle of DC. We're kind of landlocked. There's not really any space to expand and build on facilities. Some of the other schools, the larger conferences are in more rural cities where maybe you have more bells and whistles than we have. And then we're underfunded. Historically, as HBCUs have been underfunded. So that trickles down to athletics. So we can't really offer sometimes as much as what some of the other larger schools can offer, but we're finding that our athletes want to come here and stay here because they want to go to Howard. But back to the transfer portal. So we are feeling the effects of that. And I wonder how that's going to look. And, you know, the changes were mentioned earlier about the immediate transfer now. So you don't have to sit out any years to play, and the transfer, once you enter the transfer portal and you're accepted somewhere else. But on the conference changes, then we haven't really been affected. We play a regional schedule mostly. We've had overtures to join other conferences the past few years, but decided to stay in the MEAC because that was the best for our institution at the time.
Right, well, University of Houston, how do you want to?
Well, you know, we just changed conferences too, so we're part of the Big 12 now, and we anticipate that there will be problems associated with travel for some of our programs. But we haven't seen it yet because we just got realigned. In terms of the transfer portal, you know, we have certainly had losses of some very talented student athletes. And so that has impacted us. And I think Kathy wants to add something as well. Kathy?
Just to build on in agreement with Randy's comments, you know, the conversation among FARs at the Big 12 conference level is really to Dr. Lassner's point too. Like, we're having really serious discussions right now about the potential impact of the geographic distribution of the current and, you know, potentially continued expanding representation. And so Randy's exactly right. Like, we haven't finalized and or experienced in, you know, at scale ways the impact of being geographically distributed as we are and will be soon. But it is top of mind. So the conference itself is talking a lot about that, and I would say thoughtful ways. So, you know, it's to be determined how that shakes out in the end, but it is an active part of the conversation. The other thing that I would say about transfer portal specific to the University of Houston, although I think this is a pattern expanding nationally, is the university, not only and really actually not even particularly to do with the transfer portal, but it has had an impact on transfer students is looking at degree offerings that have meaningful impact post-graduation, meaning you know, degrees of value that also have perhaps more flexibility for folks coming in later in academic trajectory. So for us, we just stood up about a year ago a bachelor's of science in integrated studies. And there are boundaries on this, and, you know, Vera, you know, any of us could be glad to share information on this, but it has some capacity to be more able, if you will, for folks coming in through the transfer portal to reduce the credit loss that collegiate athletes may be experiencing as a function of transfer. So I think institutions, again, not for us at UH, this was not something stood up on behalf of athletics. That wasn't in the calculus of the work, but it absolutely has had some, I would say, positive impact on the capacity to keep folks who are coming in on track to timed a degree.
I would like to add to that, when we talked with the NCAA officers this morning, it came up about how students who transfer could potentially lose credits. So I think what U of H has done is to be very thoughtful about how you can have a transfer student not lose credits, because the graduation rate is important to us at U of H, but it's important across NCAA statistics as well. So I think that particular thinking about how to generate a major that will accommodate transfer students and not losing credits is very important.
And Susie, did you want to add anything?
Just that the integrated studies degree was something that came through the Senate and undergraduate committee, and I think is a testament to the shared governance that is happening here at the University of Houston and is necessary for navigating these really challenging times. So
I just wanted to add, University of Cincinnati has an integrated studies, and that is how a boatload of our athletes get through. But that was created 5-6 years ago. It's one of our more popular majors on campus with our students in general. And I think you're going to find that is similar at University of Houston if you allow it in marketing. It's surprisingly popular with kids today. I want to create my own neuroscience pathway because I think I want to go to med school.
Yeah,
Between med school and law school. And so I'm creating my own, and ours is all run through arts and sciences.
that's how you're showing up. And we have data. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, that one of the things that preceded the work on this, we have state connected data. We have I run a data center. That's a short summary, right? Where we can look at state level students across institutions in Texas who are completing analog degrees. And so they had data coming in that sort of it connects into workforce, that the workforce outcomes are on par, at least with median degree income rates of the full distribution of majors. So I think that was another reinforcement that this wasn't, again, for us, not about athletics, but it wasn't a degree that it was a degree that had value, I guess is how I would summarize.
I just want to say that at Louisiana State University, the Office of Academic Affairs worked really hard to have transfer credits easily come over for the student athletes, and they worked really hard with some of the departments where a lot of those courses would be involved to make it easier for those courses to become credited towards the student athlete.
Adrian, you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably echo a lot of what everybody else has already stated. Talking about the integrated studies, UCF has had that for quite a while. And like the gentleman said from the University of Cincinnati, not only is it a popular major with the student athletes, it's probably the third or fourth biggest major outside of engineering on campus. I won't talk too much about the transfer portal here at UCF because, again, it's relatively new. We don't have a lot of hard data, but I will talk about conference realignment. Again, with the Universities of Houston and Cincinnati, we made the move from the American Conference to the Big 12. I was familiar with the American Conference because I was at Tulsa. One of the benefits to being at a conference is you get to play in cities where you draw students from. When I was at the University of Tulsa, every year we would play SMU in Dallas and we would play University of Houston in Houston, and Tulsa pulled from a lot of those cities when we were recruiting students. And we also had a lot of alumni that lived in those cities. And that really, that's kind of like the conference alignment that I grew up with. I grew up in the Birmingham, Alabama in the Southeastern Conference. I went to Auburn. Of my 4 or 5 best friends in high school, 2 of them went to Alabama, one of them went to Mississippi State, one of them went to Tennessee. And that's really what made it such a strong conference, because it has all those ties that you went to high school with all these people that went to the other schools, and you could brag on how your team is doing. So, the question is, when the University of Central Florida made the move to the Big 12, which is why did they do it? And the answer you always get is exposure, right? Well, if my mother was still alive, she would say, can you take that to the grocery store and buy anything with it? We do get, it is a better TV deal. We get a lot of money. But, it's interesting because the University of Central Florida draws students from the state of Florida, Philadelphia, Boston, New York City, and Chicago. And not one of those areas that the University of Central Florida draws from has a team in the Big 12 or anywhere near there. So in terms of there being any kind of alignment with alumni groups or potential students, you showing off your product to students that might come to Orlando to go to school, that's not really going to happen in this new conference, I don't think. It was done strictly for a just to say we're in the Power 5, which to me has really shifted to the Power 2. But anyway, that's what I'll say about conference realignment. So, I was meeting with our dean the other day. We're going to have our alumni tailgate party this year in Tempe, Arizona, at the Arizona State University of Central Florida game. So it'll be interesting to see how many University of Central Florida alumnus are living in the Phoenix area. It's an interesting dynamic at the University of Central Florida. We get to say we're in a Power 5 conference. As I noted in my introduction, the athletic budget is going to go way up. 66% of every dollar raised at the UCF Foundation goes towards athletics, which is a pretty big number. So that's all I'll say about our conference realignment, other than the fact that our student athletes, as the president of the University of Hawaii noted, football, they're going to be traveling to Denver, Colorado, Tempe, Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, Lubbock, Texas, Kansas State, Kansas. Not a lot of easy places to get to. Again, like the president noted, for football, that might not be such a big deal, but for certainly the Olympic sports, it's not convenient.
I think we have a topic for at least one session next year.
All right, well, you write that down because you'll be in charge. Okay, so this is also very new. The idea of having employee status, unionizing. Has anybody confronted this or thought about it or are working on it? And we could go in the same order. So Paul?
Yeah, we're talking about it. What we think is going to happen is a percentage of the money the athletic department makes is going to have to go to the student athletes. So for us, employment is not an issue because our state law says they can't be employees, but that money is somehow or another going to go to the student athletes. So in fact, we're budgeting right now in several different ways. Budgeting based on where we are now, budgeting based on what if we have to pay 10% of our revenue to student athletes, and what we call the disaster budget, which is what if we have to give 20% of our budget to student athletes? How is that going to affect things? How's it going to affect the structure of the athletic department? What's going to have to happen? Because again, you have two ways to make a budget work. You raise revenue or decrease expenses. And for us, it's pretty much decreasing expenses. It's no surprise to everybody in here that we have a large amount of money that we're paying to a former football coach. If you want to average it out over 7 years, per day, it's $26,301 a day, to put it in perspective. And our athletic budget is, yeah, quit laughing, Adrian. I see you there. Our Adrian was a doctoral student of ours, so I can give him a hard time. So those are things that really will affect us. And yeah, I guess if you divide into halves and the other ones, we're considered a half. But right now, it's no surprise. It's public knowledge that we're about $20 million in the hole in our athletic department. So the idea that A&M never runs out of money and always has ways to get money, particularly when the price of oil is high, we're really going to have to work hard to dig out of a hole. And if we have to now take 20% of our revenue and spread it among the student athletes, there's going to be some drastic things that will have to be done.
I can jump in on the employee question. Not so much, I mean, for most institutions, this isn't really an institutional question, right? The Dartmouth situation was the Regional Labor Relations Board director made that determination, and nobody knows where it will go. There's a lot of disagreement, controversy, a set of issues to still be sorted out in intercollegiate athletics with everything that's changing. Pretty much the only thing that I hear widespread agreement on across the board is that student athletes should not be formally declared as employees. And I agree that pushes the conversation to, well, how will they be compensated? So originally that was going to be nil, Alston payments, a whole bunch of stuff. But the reality is, and Texas A&M, sorry, you're the poster child for this with the, what was it, a $77 million payoff of a football coach who wasn't winning enough games. I mean,
it was only 76 million.
Oh, sorry. I hate to exaggerate. We have to look ourselves in the eye as higher education when that's what we're doing with the money. And it's not going to pay, to pick on Kelly again, women's water polo players. And by the way, we're ranked number 2 in the country right now. So I'm big on women's water polo. But it's going to go to pay the blue chip men's football, men's basketball, and maybe there's a prayer that it will include women's basketball player after this amazing season that we just saw. And I just saw a quote from, I'm sure all of you know who Gordon Gee is. He's probably the most traveled and longest serving president in the country. And he's been in, super high-end places, right? Ohio State, now he's at West Virginia. And he said out loud what I have been saying more quietly to my colleagues in my conferences, enough that they're tired of hearing from me. We did this to ourselves, right? And it wasn't even the Power Fives. It was the 30 schools at the top of the Power Fives that make buckets of money. And they just started paying truly obscene salaries to coaches. And so this is where we found ourselves, 5 or 6 years ago, and the reckoning began with mostly white men making upwards of $10 million and mostly athletes of color in football and basketball generating that revenue. And the more money that came in on TV deals, which is what drove conference realignment. In fact, it was football. It wasn't even basketball. It was football TV deals. That money started going into higher and higher coaches' salaries because schools started, basically poaching each other's coaches, paying whatever it took to pay off the previous school. And that disparity just grew to a point where it was not possible to explain how we were working in anyone's best interest other than the bottom lines of those 30 athletic departments. Because, the comment from A&M, that's great, so losing $20 million is pretty good for somebody who isn't one of the top 30. And we used to joke about this at my place with my former athletic director. Being in a group of 5 school is a lot more affordable than being at the bottom of a Power 5 conference. And the bottom of the Power 5 conference is really, the fight to try to keep up with Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, you name it. That is fierce, and the expectations are so high, both financially and, I don't know if there was somebody here who was or is at LSU, watching the whole F. King Alexander story and how that repercussed around. It's more than just the money. It's also the behaviors and the tolerance of behavior that none of us would accept in anybody else in our institutions.
I interviewed here, President Lassner, tough question, unfair question. Were your colleagues asleep when this 5-10 year escalation was going on? Are they disengaged because the president maybe brought up in the humanities and really doesn't care about athletics, and so the athletic people were making these deals? How do we get
Yeah, so I mean the presidents are the boards of the conferences, right? So but the decisions are made institutionally. So as I mentioned in my intro, I'm in the Big West, which is no football at all, Olympic sports, 5 University of California schools, 5 Cal State University schools, and us. So for none of them is athletics the marquee front porch of these schools. It's something where I think intercollegiate athletics is still considered part of the student experience, both for the participants and the spectators. The Mountain West, the Mountain West is a little bit different. So after the Big 12 poached the best of the AAC schools, including UCF, Cincinnati a few years ago, because we emerged from that unscathed, we're probably the top group of 5 conference now. So we're kind of funny because we have schools at the top of the group of 5 that do aspire to be part of, a power, I don't know what to call them, power 2, power next to conferences and up their game. So they create pressure on the rest of our conference around salaries. And we're not talking openly about it, I would say, but it's clearly there as I watch a school like UNLV announce a new, football coach salary that's double what it was when I came into this gig, 10 or so years ago. Oh, I should say, I didn't say this in my introduction. Kelly knows. I announced my retirement at the end of this calendar year, so I'm a lot more frank now than I used to be about all that.
It's true. And he's not the kind of college president who goes for the big salaries either. I think you kept your UH salary when you became president, which I really admired. But anyway.
Yeah, I have a personal story that doesn't fit this, so I won't do it now.
Well,
I can tell you,
actually,
Kelly, later.
one of the tough questions I was going to ask later is, in this structure we have where we have Power 5, we have Group of 5, we have HBCU, we have Ivy League, is there going to be some movement capacity like the Premier League in England where you can be relegated or you can be, I mean, maybe it's too soon to even think about that, but as you say, if people want to get into the power, whatever, I mean, I guess it's just the negotiating of contracts with media or, with other schools. Anyway, food for thought.
I can speculate about that because I do think about it a lot. There's a proposal out of the NCAA. I don't know if it came up in your earlier panel to essentially create a super. It isn't clear how it overlays on the conference structure, and because the big money is in football, media money is in football, and that's driving a lot of this. So the night commission believes, you deal with football, that will help a lot. But the notion of creating some sort of super division, and maybe it's just for football, that's unclear. The separation of the Power Four into the Power Two and the Power Next Two already happened with the football money, the new football money deal that was struck about a month ago, where the SEC and the Big Ten get more than more access to money than the Big 12 and the ACC. So, and then the Group of Five is a level below that. I don't think we know yet where that will end up. And some of it is tied up in as I mentioned earlier, the sort of one thing everybody seems to agree on is student athletes should not be declared employees. And there is a belief that that will take congressional action. And part of the request for congressional action is giving the NCAA some safe harbor, unclear how far, from antitrust, so that, right now, NCAA regulations mean very little when NCAA members continually challenge the rules in court and say that's unfair. And mostly the members are winning, saying that the NCAA can't really do much of anything when it relates to money and student athletes. So it's hard to imagine this Congress actually accomplishing anything. So I'm not particularly optimistic that Congress is going to be our solution, but there is a lot of belief that somehow they will set this thing up for some sort of re-leveling of a playing field.
Yvonne, did you want to talk about unionization? I kind of lost track of our topic, but I think it was unionization and employment of students.
Yeah, so much great conversation going on now. I wonder, that a new model is definitely coming. We try to be proactive as possible across the board, but I hope schools like Howard, other mid-majors aren't left out of that conversation. The NCAA is so you have so many different constituents just in Division I, right? With a lot of discussion about the FBS schools, and that's like the top 130 revenue generating schools. And I think it's like 28 that actually profit out of that group. But then you have the FCS schools like Howard and Sanford, Furman. You have Division I basketball only schools like my alma mater, St. John's University, in the Big East Conference, the majority of those schools. So you have so many different groups that you have to accommodate. So I hope this new model that emerges, all that is taken into account, because if there is a unionization rule that's passed and Howard and other schools like us have to comply, we're probably going to have to cut in our expenses, which means probably cutting positions. Don't want to cut sports, but that may happen. Well, we're already a limited resource institution, so we don't get a lot of revenue. So it would be difficult for us if we were handed that same cards as maybe the Power 5 FBS schools. But I think that President Baker, he's definitely out the box thinker. So I think whatever proposal comes down the line will hopefully be a happy medium for all the institutions in the NCAA. But yeah, we're definitely going down uncharted territories, right? We're moving slow in the NIL space. I know that might come up later, but we're losing players, probably mentioned this earlier, to the portal, probably mostly because of the NIL money on the outside at the bigger schools. And we are not moving as fast towards the collectives conversation some of the bigger schools are having. We have one collective at Howard, and right now it benefits just football and men's basketball. And I wonder about the Title IX implications of that down the road.
We're going to come to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
U of H. So now I can differentiate between UH and U of H. But
We call ourselves UH.
not allowed here today. You're U of H. So
There are very few things that the Texas legislature does to promote and advance education in the state of Texas. But the one thing that they do for us is they have a law that says the students, government employees cannot, students can't be unionized. So we're protected against that by the legislature. That's one of the only positive comments I will have to say about them.
Does it mean students can't or just government employees can't?
Government employees can't, and we're a state institution, so we're a government employee.
So the students are considered government employees
They would have to be.
to not unionize.
Yeah.
You know what I'm,
They would be considered state employees and therefore unable. to
if they were employed.
Yeah.
So they could not unionize,
Yeah.
but they would have to be
And public
employed.
institutions, absolutely.
Got it, okay.
And people keep talking about the haves and the have-nots. So of the 1,100 or so athletic departments in the US, less than 5% of them are profitable.
Haves.
And so that means your SEC, your Big Ten is more than, it's about 50 schools. And so your SEC and Big Ten, assuming they're all profitable, which they probably are, that's 30 schools. And so you're left with just a few more schools that are profitable. So there are mostly have-nots and very few haves that we're talking about.
I think the number I saw, it's been a while back, was 22 athletic departments in Division I actually had a profit.
22.
21 or
The
22.
latest number that I've seen is less than 5%.
Oh,
That's all
yeah,
I
it's a
can say.
small percentage. And don't think all the SEC schools are the ones that are ending up in the black. Because there's some of them that are ending up in the red, like us.
Well, it's temporary on your behalf. And
We hope.
Yeah.
That's our aspiration, that it is temporary.
Any other?
And 300 million into our stadium this year.
Oh, my.
So I mean, if I could say something,
Go ahead, Adrian.
just make some comments on kind of what everybody else is saying. Everybody talks the word, I hate using the word profit when it comes to college athletics because, you can make an argument that a lot of schools are profitable. College athletics is a window to a lot of these schools. So I don't quite know how you look at profit. What I would like to know is how many presidents have ever called the athletic director into the office and said, if you don't turn a profit, I'm going to fire you. There's no bottom line profit motive in college athletics. And to me, that's one of the problems. Why don't we use this as an opportunity to think about repositioning the athletic department and what it means? I mean, the president of Hawaii, said the last 5 or 6 years they've lost control. The presidents took control of the NCAA in the early 90s. And using a formula that the Knight Commission came up with, they said there was 3 or 4 objectives they wanted to. The presidents have done a good job with putting academics back into athletics. That was not the case when I was in school at Auburn University in the late 1980s. They've done a terrible case at keeping commercialization out of athletics. So why don't we use this as an opportunity, not just to talk about the players and where they're going to form a union, but how do we really reposition the athletic department? At some of these SEC schools, I'm a graduate of Auburn University and I got my PhD at Texas A&M. At Auburn University, Auburn football is probably the most valuable thing on that campus. So why don't we look at a privatization model where we sort of privatize football, let private equity money take over, and then the Olympic sports can kind of go back under the auxiliary departments of the universities. I think that's certainly a model that we need to look at. If you're a fan of European soccer, and I don't know how many of you are, when you see a team like Bayern Munich, which is Germany's top soccer team, that team is part of a club. Bayern Munich offers 30 sports. The only one you've ever heard of is the soccer team. And about 10 years ago, they broke the soccer team off from the club, and they told private equity and they told companies, you can buy a share of Bayern Munich. Adidas owns 10% of it. Private equity owns the other 39% of it, and then 51% of it is still owned by the club. So it can fund the other sports. And I think maybe that's the model that we need to at least look at, which is getting football off the books of the universities. That's the only way you're ever going to slow down spending, is to have some sort of bottom line profit motive. It's pretty clear to me that we're moving to a unionization model in college athletics, probably sooner than later. But there's got to be some sort of accountability. There's got to be some sort of accountability in the athletic department. I laugh when Dr. Batista said that, they're still paying off Jimbo Fisher. But the athletic director, Ross Bjork, who gave him the extension on that contract, he parlayed that extension to a job at Ohio State. So it doesn't seem to me like there's a lot of accountability towards the athletic directors in this as well.
Well, actually, that leads to another question about how do we protect, maintain Title IX in Olympic sports? I mean, and we can open it up to everybody. We don't have to go in order still, but what do folks think about, because we've heard cutting money, we've heard, moving football out. I feel better about, being in group of 5 now. We don't have as much,
We don't lose as much money as the other guys.
Right. I feel good now. Joan, what, go ahead, Joan.
I just had a quick question in regards to budgets for athletic departments. Are athletic departments required to have a balanced budget at the end of the year, like a lot of state governments do? Like you have to expend your money that year. You can't carry over money.
I don't think so. Independent, it depends on the university.
Our athletic department is completely independent of the university financially. The university puts no money into our athletic department. It's all donations, revenue from ticket sales, media, broadcast rights. So the answer to that is no. And up until recently, we had a pretty nice reserve set aside.
And do you put any money into the university sports? Or you fund all the university sports? Or I shouldn't say you.
The athletic department funds the NCAA sports.
Okay.
We also have donated back money to refurbish some classrooms. It's in the great scheme of things, it's not a large part of the athletic department budget. And honestly, I'm not sure if we still do that.
So in response to Adrian's comment about accountability, and this may be true at A&M, the athletics department does not report to the president of the University of Houston. They report directly to the Board of Regents.
I think that's crazy.
The athletic,
I would make a good argument that all athletic departments really report to the top couple of donors.
Is it part of the school?
yeah,
That's so interesting.
the organizational chart is A&M is the athletic director reports to the president, who reports to the board. But in reality, one of the big problems at A&M is the board wants to run athletics. And Adrian, you and I need to have a conversation about what you said earlier, so I can tell you what really happened. But yeah, we do go through the president.
Kathy and Susie may have something more to add or correct about what I said, but it's my understanding the athletics department does not report to the president at the University of Houston.
So my friendly amendment would be that the athletic director is on the president's cabinet. So the athletic director is a direct report to the president, as I understand it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna throw
I
out
think
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the two observations. One is that the Texas A&M is one of those, whether we want to say 22, 27, 5%, that I usually just say maybe as many as 30 schools that generate a financial surplus from athletics. And I don't usually use the word profit for all kinds of reasons. But those are the schools that are driving most of the changes for the other 1,000+ athletic departments around the country, because they're the visible places that have lots of money that there are many opinions about. I think I'd be shocked if the org chart actually shows any athletics director reporting to a board. But the reality is that in many cases, boards do drive substantial athletics decisions. And there are lots of examples that have been, if you dig back into Chronicle about athletic directors and presidents and boards interactions. And I think the F. King Alexander is maybe the most recent one that has been well studied at LSU, and then the almost successful move to Oregon to escape it. It's there is no control. That's what I'd say is the stories about whether they break even are all different. Other than those, say 30, every athletics department is getting some sort of institutional subsidy. So the way it's described is different in every place. It could be that all of the scholarships for athletes are funded by the institution, could be direct financial support, could be the student fees. So I don't know if you extract, a couple $100 per student per semester at a large institution as an athletic fee that goes to the athletic department. Do you want to say that the athletic department was breaking even, or is that part of an institutional subsidy? So there's pretty good data out there, and you can slice and dice it if you're really interested. But I think the bottom line is, even when athletic departments run in deficit, that is their expenditures exceed their revenues, however defined, institutions typically cover that in some fashion, either by calling it a loan or just making that difference disappear within the overall institutional budget.
Go ahead, Joan.
Hi, I'm at LSU, and you keep mentioning LSU, but when Joe Oliva was our athletic director, the athletic department was giving academics up to $10 million a year at one point. And then when we got Scott Woodward, he took all that money back and started using it only for athletics. They do pay for their own, what do they call it? The students, athlete center, for, tutoring and all that information. But last year, I think our athletic department had a deficit. It was published in a newspaper. But where they get most of their money for doing things like building new athletic facilities and revamping them or handling those is the Tiger Athletic Foundation. Tiger Athletic Foundation controls a lot of things regarding athletics. So if we have to pay off a coach that left, then the Tiger Athletic Foundation comes up with money to help pay for that, not the university.
Siobhan or Susie or Kathy, did you want to add anything to the discussion of, I think we're still on unionization and employees? So I also wanted to throw out there something we learned this morning, that with all these court cases out there. Oh, sorry, did you?
Nope. I'm just saying I'm good. Nothing to add to this.
Okay, so a fairly terrifying thing that I learned this morning was that there are all these court cases out there, both against NCAA, against the conferences, and against the schools. And so there's the potential that all our schools may be obligated to pay out past athletes. Yeah, past athletes. Which could, of course, complicate everything even more. So I won't ask people about that, but how are we taking care of the health and safety? We talked about the travel times that are probably gonna be a bigger thing. I know that Jerry wants to talk about how many trainers, athletic trainers we have. But also mental health is a big issue for our student athletes and our students in general. So who would like to tackle the health and welfare question?
I'll be glad to start.
Go ahead.
So, we have just hired another counselor in our athletic department. And I got some numbers here. So every incoming student athlete has to meet with, a counselor, a health counselor, before they can do anything, including go to a practice. So we catch them on the way in. And so I asked for numbers. During last school year, 22-23, we had 272 students that took advantage of individual counseling for a total of 1,818 sessions for the last full school year. In just the fall this year, we had 240 students, which created 1,407 individual counseling sessions, one-on-one. And so that's for half the year. So obviously it's going up now that we have more counselors. The one thing that I hear most often from student athletes, and our surveys back this up, is when they talk about time commitment, and you ask them to talk about their day, they get up early, they have weights at 6, they get through with the workout, they go eat breakfast, they go to class, they do all their things, they have practice in the afternoon, they go to study hall. At the night, they try to do a little social stuff, and we find out that they're sleeping 5 or 6 hours. And so the biggest health problem, at least of our student athletes, is they're just not getting enough sleep. And I don't know how you can control it, but that's the one thing I hear most from student athletes is I just don't have time to get enough rest.
And that's very important as we're finding out more and more.
So those are the numbers from our group.
Other comments on health and welfare?
Do you know how many athletic trainers you have on staff?
Plenty. The answer is, yeah, we've got plenty of trainers, and there's a trainer assigned to every sport.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some have 2 sports, but there's at least one trainer assigned to every sport. And they are required to be there at a competition and to be available during a practice.
That's a have for you.
So you have that requirement, regardless of squad size, etc. So one athletic trainer, regardless of squad size.
Oh, no, larger squads have more trainers.
Thank you.
Greg, was your
So just to kind of jump in on this, it's Jerry's right, and part it's a numbers issue, but if we're really talking about the health and safety of the student athletes, we're operating systems where we're paying coaches $8 million, and when you pay someone $8 million, you give them $8 million of decision-making authority. And colleagues have been fired from jobs, like the head athletic trainer at Texas A&M, for crossing a football coach. We talk about a lot of things escalating out of control. That's certainly one of them. And when you have the tail wagging the dog, so to speak, which is what we've got when coaches have that much authority, I would counter that it's nearly impossible to address anything about athlete welfare until that's fixed.
Who's your highest paid government employee in your state? Tell me who's the head coach of your biggest football program, and I'll tell you the answer.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Susie, go ahead.
Sure. We and I can tag team with Randy there. Kathy had to step away for another meeting. So for the University of Houston, we have 13 athletic trainers for just over 400 student athletes. This was information that Randy requested from our athletics area. 4 work directly with football, 2 for the track programs, and every other sports has 1 dedicated athletic trainer. In regards to the mental health question, mental health support for our campus community has been definitely top of mind more broadly across our university. We have about 47,000 students at the University of Houston. Mental health services are viewed as supporting a triage type model, not necessarily continuing care. So, when an individual is in crisis, we have supports to, meet with them and at the initial consultation, but then continuing care would be directed to other agencies that would provide that. That's not necessarily something that we have the resources to provide, or even promise for the university more broadly. So that's been, I think, a struggle within our university and transparency about that approach. And, amidst the mental health crisis that's not unique to the University of Houston, but that has, deeply affected all of us, faculty included. Athletics, I think, becomes a target because of all of the resources and the complexities of how those resources are allocated or the perceived return on investment of those resources. So there are conversations that happen saying, we're directing resources here. We perceive that we need to do more continuing care type mental health. Why can't we just move funding from one bucket to another? So we field a lot of that kind of thing through Senate discussions, and it's really challenging. I'll throw it over to you, Randy. Do you want to add anything further for UH?
No, I think you've summarized the athletic trainer and what we're doing with regard to mental health very well. Thank you, Susie.
Siobhan, any comment from Howard? I know you guys take really good care of students. So I guess I have high.
We do. That's right. That's right. We try to. We have, you don't want to hear our staff numbers though. We have 8 trainers for 21 sports and nearly 500 student athletes. So even our head football trainer has another sport that he works with. We just created a new position to oversee our student athlete health, wellness, and performance areas. And that's going to include athletic training, strength and conditioning, and mental health. We have a staff of 4 for strength and conditioning. And we have a part-time sports psychologist who also works at the university. So that position is partially funded by the school. So we're trying to build more in that area because it's really important. Not just for athletes, but the whole school, just taking care of mental health and athletes and health and wellness is a really crucial area. And we're losing a lot of trainers across the board. And in the industry, it seems like they're leaving college athletics. So we're just trying to increase the salaries and make the environments easier for them to retain them.
How many student athletes do you have?
Almost 500, 480 something as of this year. But we have 21 sports.
I'm going to leave David off the hook on this because last year we had the mental health services present about how they started up the program at University of Hawaii. So that was exciting. But do you guys have other questions for our diverse group?
I was just going to bring something up that we've been doing at Ole Miss that I need to delve into a little bit more. But so our athletics department, and I can't remember the name of the training, but it's basically a kind of peer first aid training. They invested it in all athletic staff have been trained in
mental health first aid?
Might be, it might be. But it was an intensive 2-day training. I mean, it wasn't anything to pop at. And as far as I know, all staff are now trained in that. And some players have been trained in it as well. And so that's one of the things that we've been doing that I've been very glad to hear about. Because that's a really good first step, I think.
Greg, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so just quickly, if you could roll the clock back and or walk into a classroom full of students that want to come into your role in 5 years, what do they need to know? What do we need to be teaching leaders, administrators to come into this environment? I mean, so far we've got a bunch of moving targets. You know, it's like run for the roundhouse, Katie. They can't get you cornered there. So what do we teach kids? How do we prepare kids to enter this environment? And this is really a random off the wall question. I got that. But that's
No, actually, it's not, because I was thinking the same thing. Do all our schools have a life skills financial investment training program for our athletes? You do.
Very
Yeah.
intensive.
You do. I don't
There's
think,
multiple classes for our athletes, and some are required in the summer prior for this.
oh,
So we have, I don't know if it's required. I think it should be required. I don't think it should just be required for student athletes though. I think it should be required for all students. I think I always have a problem with that. But I think that's the problem. It's offered, but if it's not required, then they're still missing out on it. And you're gonna have the ones that's probably raised the right way by their parents or educated already that's gonna be taking those classes. It's kind of like when you talk about DEI, the people that's there normally are the ones that care about it. So I think it's the same thing with financial literacy courses. It got to be a way to where we're really making kids, they're required to take these life skills courses or these professional etiquette or financial literacy. And if they're not doing that, then it's impacting. And I struggle with it. You have college athletes that represent universities and they don't communicate properly or the way that I think it could be more effectively, you know, to be representing a university. I think all of those things should be taught because they're a brand now and they're representing themselves. And I think they need to be taught that day one, that as soon as you get on this campus, you're a brand, people are looking at you.
and when I first thought about this, I thought, oh, well, I would have been mad if somebody had forced me to take financial literacy, but you know what? I'd probably be richer right now.
Yeah, sure.
So it's true.
So one thing I can say is that there are 2 models for how this is done. So I think a lot of like Power 5 now does this in some way. There is the course model. So some universities have student athletes are, for lack of a better word, required to take an actual course in financial literacy for which they get credit and counts towards degree progression. And others, this is done within the athletic department. And they have different ways in which they can work. So we do ours, the Gamecock CEO program is done through the athletic department. All student athletes are fitted for a suit at least once, if not twice, during their career as a student athlete. I think you guys do. So they have interview training. They have somebody come in and help them work on their resumes. They do media training and they do a financial literacy course. All of that is done though straight through the athletics department. One of my challenges is that, or one of my discussion points is, the athletics department likes to run wholly independent of the remainder of the university without much like consideration or thought about how could they better integrate in the university. So all of those things we could actually do within the confines of the university, but they outsource them for not small dollars to others to do them because they're people that they know. And so I've been trying to build bridges, for lack of a better term, but really create integration to utilize university knowledge structures and create those so that we keep it within the university but accomplish the same goals.
I have a question. Generally, is what can the NCAA or any of the conferences do to help all the schools get more funds to benefit the student athletes, you know, as far as their mental health and their their welfare and things like that.
They
Like,
could not pay their coaches $8 million a year and siphon some of that money to where it would actually positively impact that student athlete.
But I mean, I guess it was the last session, we should have had that question, but I think it's pretty clear they don't have that control.
yeah, the smaller schools don't have that. How do we help the smaller schools and organizations? Dr. Mansfield, do you have any idea?
Oh, that's a great question. We just need more funding, more resources. As a limited resource institution, where would it come from? We do a good job receiving donations, but our endowment's pretty low compared to other institutions. Although pretty good on the HBCU scale, but low compared to others. We need more. We do have different revenue streams, ticketing, corporate partnerships, but it's nearly not enough because of the spending. And I empathize with the larger schools because it's a bigger can of worms for them. The university supports us for sure. Our budget is subsidized by them, but we're going to need some more creative thinking. But it was mentioned maybe private equity, right? Someone else mentioned that. That might be a little bit too risque for our I don't know. I mean, I think we should consider things like that, but I wonder if we can do that at our level. I see some of the ACC, the Florida State, and other schools considering that.
Do you mean like an athletic foundation like LSU has?
I mean, that and also loans, private equity loans on the outside. Yeah.
So I have some questions, mostly directed at Greg, but I'd like anyone else to weigh in. But in terms of training and your trainers, what sort of special things are you doing for concussion-related injuries? And do you have specialists on your staff that deal with exactly that?
So yes, we do. They are taught use of all the current diagnostic methodology that's out there. They're taught protocols, and in addition to that, when they do their clinical rotations, the expectation is that they are practicing and putting that into play. They're taught it in the classroom. They're assessed their ability to assess their ability to assess during their clinical placement. So yeah, it's taught, it's reinforced extensively. Is that what you were asking?
In our situation, it's actually enforced too. For example, there's one female soccer player who's on our committee who is still getting her scholarship, but she can't play anymore.
Sure.
So I mean, I think it's not only a good assessment, but it's good enforcement.
I would add that our association in the state of Oklahoma was instrumental in getting our concussion legislation through, whereby it's a state law. If you're symptomatic with a concussion, you can't return to play until you're cleared by a healthcare professional. And there's one of those in all 50 states right now. And that was our doing. That was us.
So do you have?
And I recognize this is a collegiate conference, but that law that Greg was just mentioning, it would trickle down to all levels of athletics. So junior high, high school, collegiate, etc.
All right,
I-
now question. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I would just say, I hope that everyone understands the depth and breadth of the training that is required to become an athletic trainer. There is what the public sees that we do, the tape ankles and the carry water and, maybe, do a little rehab here and there. But the relationships that we form with our patients directly impact their willingness to seek help. The mental health element that we see in many college companies now, or college departments now, are directly stemming from things that we have seen as athletic trainers over, you know, a very long time, but it's escalated in the last 10 years. The entry into this profession is now at the master's level. It used to be at the bachelor's level. We sit for a national exam. 49 states require additional either certification or licensure. So that's a good thing. And, you know, there's been several times mentioned today, well, you know, we just can't find athletic trainers or we can't hire athletic trainers. When you have a medical professional whose liability and job is to protect, hopefully prevent and protect as many athletic injuries as possible, make quality return to play decisions, not bobble the ball on medical care, and you want to start them out at $40,000 to come in and work, you know, basically 12 hours straight for 9 months out of the year, and then not really even have all that much time off in the summer, like that's a high order. Especially when we think about the fact that, you know, coaches can call an audible at any point in time on what a schedule is supposed to be. So you're supposed to have a day off, and then all of a sudden, because you didn't play well yesterday, coach has practice. So there's so many things that athletic trainers absorb behind the scenes. That is one of the reasons why athletic trainers are leaving the collegiate setting, because they can get paid more to work regulated hours down the street. So, you know, that is that.
So final question, we'll go in the original order, and I'm just going to use first names because I'm best at that. But what should faculty do to help our student athletes? What role should faculty play? Any recommendations? Now I forgot our original order. Paul.
I think you need to be aware of what's going on and hold the athletic department accountable for academics. I report to our faculty senate at least once a year. I've offered to do it once a semester, so they'll know what's going on. Since you gave me the floor, my colleague from Ole Miss, you see it at the bottom, Ron Rishlock, sent me an email. He stole my idea about unanticipated problems, and he and a colleague have written a law review article, Unanticipated Problems with the Transfer Portal. And if you're interested, I'll give you the citation. So if you got your pens ready, it's 53 University of Memphis Law Review 929.
Can you repeat that?
53 University of Memphis Law Review 929. Ron, did I get that citation right?
We'll get, you can email it to me and we'll get it. Yeah, we'll get it to everybody.
Okay.
All right. So hold athletic departments responsible.
And know what they're doing.
No, yeah. So we're here trying to understand all this stuff. All right. David, what would you like to see faculty do to help student athletes?
I think some of the topics that we led with around impact on the educational experience are likely to be an area where faculty will be most effective, to the extent, you know, I could just speak for myself, but you know, I worry a lot about the athletics budget, but I don't find that in general, most faculty consider athletics to be of equal priority to whatever it is they want on the academic side of the house. That may not be true of the faculty in this session because you all have a particular affinity for athletics. But what I hear more often is, why are you funding athletics? That money should go to my department, the library, my classrooms, whatever sorts of things we're wrestling with in complex and difficult budget times. But I think the one area where faculty really can have a very strong voice is on the academic success of students. And I think these questions about, how we manage transfer in and out, it's kind of ironic because before this round started, we were dealing with an influx of graduate transfers, and we were struggling to find one-year graduate programs that they could finish while competing, because we're a very attractive place to come after you finish your degree and you still have another year of eligibility. And now we have sort of the opposite problem of how do we make sure they get even one degree? And that would be my suggestion.
All right, great. And Siobhan, what should faculty do and be aware of?
It's more of the same. I think the more the faculty realizes that athletics is not a separate entity, we're still part of the institution. And some of the best presidents have shown that, including Notre Dame, but it stands out because their AD is not the president, but their AD just recently retired. But he always talked about how athletics is part of the institution, and he wants the athletes. They don't need a whole separate area for lunch, even though they have that. They need to be embedded with the institution. So I think as faculty members, having events like this, leaning into the FAR, whoever's on your campus, and empathizing, which a lot of you do, about the student athletes and the weight of what they have to do and manage on top of being a student. Everything else around practice and travel, there's a lot to manage. But knowing that once they graduate, they land great jobs, and often right after they graduate, because of the training they received as a student athlete. So it definitely prepares them for greater pastures after they leave. But I think that's it. Just realizing that we're all in this together, and athletics is certainly embedded with the university and not a separate island off from everything else, all the other units.
All right, and U of H.
So I think one of the things that we're doing and we should expand upon is to find ways to facilitate acceptance of transfer credit so that student success can be maintained. So new programs, more communication with the student athletes to see what their needs are, and then how we might develop courses that can help minimize their time in school by accepting the credit that they've already earned at a separate school.
Susie, you want to add?
Sure. Definitely continuing coming to the table with the conversations about allocations and subsidies and use of our student fee, just being educated about the complexities of the funding and budget in the university, and then engaging in conversations through Senate related mechanisms. That's really our role here, Randy and I. I also am excited about what I heard in the offering of educational programming, that integration between the expertise that we're offering in the academic side that could have utility in connecting to our student athlete population. I was looking at where our financial literacy education for student athletes currently sits, and it's being provided by TDECU, as far as I can tell. And so I think about, again, the expertise in our College of Business and what that might look like if we were able to bring in the connections between the faculty in entrepreneurship and financial departments to bring some of that programming to student athletes, as well as the population of our campus. So I don't know, that's something that I'm going to be chewing on for a little while, and I'll stop there.
Adrian.
I would just kind of echo what everybody said. I mean, both, at my stops at the University of Tulsa and University of Central Florida, either the athletic director or the faculty athletic rep would participate in faculty senate once or twice a year. So I think we, especially professors that have the protection of tenure, should hold athletics accountable, academics, financially, and constantly keep them tied into the university.
And Joan, question?
Hi, I remember a while back, and I don't know if this changed because of changes in the NCAA, but there used to be internal reviews of athletic departments every 5 years, and I was involved in one of those. And I don't know if maybe that could be brought back if it's gone from every university, because that way faculty serve on committees that reviews all the information from the athletic department, and provides feedback.
Other insights, comments?
And I'll comment to that. When I was a faculty athletic rep at Tulsa, when we were in the American Conference, I advocated for sort of like academic programs have program reviews where we bring in external constituents or external review committees every 5 years, every 10 years to review our academic programs. So I advocated for doing that with athletics, bringing in maybe peer schools to kind of give the president kind of an outside look or an outside voice on how athletics is done.
Well, I want to thank all of you. This was insightful for me, at least, hopefully for all of us. I mean, I've learned so much this morning about athletics and where we are and where we're going. And yeah, so thank you guys.
Thank you. Great
Thank you
seeing
for the
everybody.
invitation.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
we have lunch.
Aloha, and time for coffee for me.
That's right. Thank you, especially. All right, I am